Chapter 6 of the Red Pyramid. Breakfast with a Crocodile. How to describe it? Not a nightmare. It was much more real and frightening. As I slept, I felt myself go weightless. I drifted up, turned, and saw my own sleeping form below. I'm dying, I thought. But that wasn't it. I wasn't a ghost. I had a new, shimmering, golden form, with wings instead of arms. I was some kind of bird. No, Sadie, I'm not a chicken. Will you let me tell the story, please? Sorry. I knew I wasn't dreaming because I don't dream in color. I certainly don't dream in all 5 senses. The room smelled faintly of jasmine. I could hear the carbonation bubbles pinging in the can of ginger ale on my nightstand. I could feel a cold wind ruffling through my feathers, and I realized the windows were open. I didn't want to leave, but a strong current pulled me out of the room like a leaf in a storm. The lights of the mansion faded below me. The skyline of New York blurred and disappeared. I shot through the mist and darkness, strange voices whispering all around me. My stomach tingled as it had earlier that night on Amos's barge. Then the mist cleared, and I was in a different place. I floated above a barren mountain. Far below, a grid of a city and their gleaming lights stretched across the valley floor. Definitely not New York. It was nighttime, but I could tell I was in the desert. The wind was so dry, the skin on my face was like paper. And I know that doesn't make sense, but my face felt like a normal face, as if that part of me hadn't transformed into a bird. Fine, Sadie, call me Carter-headed chicken. Happy? Sorry. Below me, on a ridge, stood 2 figures. They didn't seem to notice me, and I realized I wasn't glowing anymore. In fact, I was pretty much invisible, floating in the darkness. I couldn't make out the 2 figures clearly, except to recognize that they weren't human. Staring harder, I could see that one was short, squat, and hairless, with slimy skin that glistened in the starlight, like an amphibian standing on its hind legs. The other was tall and scarecrow skinny, with rooster claws instead of feet. I couldn't see his face very well, but it looked red and moist, and, well, let's just say I was glad I couldn't see any better. "Where is he?" the toad-looking one croaked nervously. "Hasn't taken a permanent host yet," the rooster-footed guy chided. "He can only appear for a short time." "You're sure this is the place?" "Yes, fool. He'll be here soon." A fiery form appeared on the ridge. The 2 creatures fell to the ground, groveling in the dirt, and I prayed like crazy that I was still invisible. "My lord," the toad said. Even in the dark, the newcomer was hard to see, just the silhouette of an outlined man in the flames. "What do they call this place?" the man asked, and as he spoke I knew for sure he was the guy who attacked Dad at the British Museum. All the fear I'd felt at that museum came rushing back, paralyzing me. I remember trying to pick up the stupid rock to throw, but I hadn't been able to even do that. I'd completely failed my dad. "My lord," Roosterfoot said, "the mountain is called Camelback. The city is called Phoenix." The fiery man laughed, a booming sound like thunder. "Phoenix. How appropriate. And the desert so much like home. All I need now is to be scoured of life. The desert should be a sterile place, don't you think?" "Oh, yes, my lord," the toad agreed. "But what of the other 4? "One is already entombed," the fiery man said. "The second is weak, She will be easily manipulated. That leaves only 2, and they will be dealt with soon enough. How? The toad asked. The fireman glowed brighter. You are an inquisitive little tadpole, aren't you? He pointed at the toad, and the poor creature's skin began to steam. No, the toad begged. No! I could hardly watch. I don't want to describe it, but if you've heard what happens when cruel kids pull salt on snails, you've got a pretty much good idea what happened to the toad. Roosterfoot took a nervous step backwards, and I couldn't blame him. We will build my temple here, the fireman said, as if nothing happened. This mountain shall serve as my place of worship. When it is complete, I will summon the greatest storm ever known. I will cleanse everything. Everything! My lord, yes, said Roosterfoot quickly. And, if I might suggest, my lord, to increase your power, The creature bowed and scraped and moved forward, as if he wanted to whisper in the fireman's ear. Just when I thought Roosterfoot was going to become fried chicken for sure, he said something to the fiery dude that I couldn't make out, and the fiery dude burned brighter. Excellent! If you can do this, you will be rewarded. If not, I understand, my lord. Go then, the fireman said. Unleash our forces. Start with the long necks. That should soften them up. Collect the younglings and bring them to me. I want them alive before they have learned their powers. Do not fail me. No, lord. Phoenix, the fireman mused. I like that very much. He swept his hands across the horizon as if he were imagining the city in flames. Soon I will rise from your ashes. What a lovely birthday present. I woke with my heart pounding, back in my own body. I felt hot, as if the fiery guy were starting to burn me. Then I realized that there was a cat on my chest. Muffin stared at me, her eyes half closed. Meow. How did you get in here? I muttered. I sat up, and for a second I wasn't sure where I was. A hotel, maybe? I almost called for Dad, but then I remembered. Yesterday, the museum, the sarcophagus. It all crashed down on me hard that I could barely breathe. No, stop, I told myself. You don't have time for grief, and this is going to sound weird, but the voice in my head almost sounded like a different person. Older, stronger. Either that was a good sign or I was going crazy, but the voice continued. Remember what you saw. He is after you. You have to be ready. I shivered. I wanted to believe it had just been a bad dream, but I knew better. I'd been through too much in the last day to doubt what I'd seen. Somehow, I'd actually left my body. I'd been to Phoenix, thousands of miles away. The fiery dude was there. I hadn't understood much what he said, but he'd talked about sending forces to capture the younglings. Gee, I wonder who that could be. Well, Muffin jumped off the bed and sniffed at the ivory headrest, looking up at me as if she were trying to tell me something. She butted her head against it and stared at me accusingly. Meow. Whatever, cat. I got up, showered, tried to dress. I found that my old clothes had disappeared in the night. Everything in the closet was my size, but way different than what I was used to. Baggy drawstring pants and a loose shirt, all plain white linen, and robes for cold weather. Kind of what the peasants of Egypt, used to wear. It wasn't exactly my style. Sadie likes to tell me that I don't have a style. She complains I dress like an old man. Button-down shirt, slacks, dress shoes. Okay, maybe I do dress like an old man. But here's the thing. My dad had always drilled into my head that I was to dress like that. I remember the first time he explained to me that I was 10, and we were on our way to the airport in Athens. It was like 112 degrees outside or something. I was complaining that I wanted to wear shorts and a t-shirt. Why couldn't I be comfortable? We weren't going anywhere important. We were just traveling. My dad put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Carter, you're getting older. You're an African American man. People will judge you more harshly, and so you must always look impeccable." "That isn't fair," I insisted. "Fairness does not mean everyone gets the same," Dad said. "Fairness means everyone gets what they need, and the only way to get what you need is to make it happen yourself. Do you understand?" I told him I didn't, but still, I did what he asked. Like caring about Egypt, the basketball, and music. Like traveling with only one suitcase, I dressed the way Dad wanted me to, because Dad was usually right. In fact, I'd never known him to be wrong until that night at the British Museum. Anyway, I put on the linen clothes from the closet. The slipper shoes were comfortable, though I doubt they'd be much good to run in. The door to Sadie's room was open, but she wasn't there. Thankfully, my bedroom door wasn't locked anymore. Muffin joined me and we walked downstairs, passing a lot of unoccupied bedrooms along the way. Whew, the mansion could have easily slept 100 people, but instead it felt empty and sad. Down in the great room, Khufu the baboon sat on the sofa with a basketball between his legs and a chunk of strange-looking meat in his hand. It was covered in pink feathers. Well, ESPN was on the television, and Khufu was watching highlights from the game last night. "Hey," I said, though I felt a little weird talking to him. "Lakers win?" Khufu looked at me and patted his basketball like he wanted a game. "Ark! Ark!" He had pink feathers hanging from his chin, and the sight made my stomach do a slow roll. Yeah, we'll play later, okay?" I said. I could see Sadie and Amos out on the terrace, eating breakfast by the pool. It should have been freezing out there, but the fire pit was blazing, and neither Amos or Sadie looked cold. I headed their way, then hesitated in front of the statue of Thoth. In the daylight, the bird-headed god didn't look quite so scary. Still, I could swear those beady eyes were just watching me expectantly. What had the fiery guy said last night? Something about catching us before we learned our powers? It sounded ridiculous, but for a moment I felt a surge of strength. Like the night before, when I'd opened the front door just by raising my hand. I felt like I could lift anything, even this 30-foot-tall statue if I wanted to. In a kind of trance, I stepped forward. Muffin meowed impatiently and butted my foot, and the feeling dissolved. "You're right," I told the cat. "Stupid idea." Besides, I could smell breakfast now. French toast and bacon, hot chocolate. I couldn't blame Muffin for being in a hurry. I followed her out onto the terrace. "Ah, Carter," Amos said. "Merry Christmas, my boy. Join us." "About time," Sadie grumbled. "I've been up for ages." But she held my eyes for a moment, like she was thinking the same thing I was. Christmas? We hadn't spent Christmas morning together since Mom died. I wondered if Sadie remembered how we used to make God's eye decorations out of yarn and popsicle sticks. Amos poured himself a cup of coffee. His clothes were similar to those he'd worn the day before, and I had to admit the guy had style. His tailored suit was made out of blue wool. He wore a matching fedora, and his hair was freshly braided with dark blue lapis lazuli, one of the stones Egyptians used for jewelry. Even his glasses matched. The round lenses were tinted blue. A tenor sax rested on a stand near the fire pit, and I could totally picture him playing out here, serenading the East River. As for Sadie, she dressed in a white linen pajama outfit like me. But somehow she managed to keep her combat boots on. She probably slept with them. She looked pretty comical with the red streaked hair and the outfit, but since I wasn't dressed any better, I couldn't really make fun of her. Amos? I asked. You didn't have any pet birds, did you? Khufu's eating something with pink feathers. Amos sipped his coffee. Sorry if that disturbed you. Khufu's very picky. He only eats foods that end in O. Doritos, burritos, flamingos. I blinked. Did you just say... Carter? Sadie warned. She looked a little queasy, like she'd already had this conversation. Please stop talking. Okay, I said. Please, Carter. Amos waved toward a buffet table piled high with food. Then we can get started with the explanations. I didn't see any flamingo on the buffet table, which was fine by me. There was just about everything else. I snagged some pancakes with butter and syrup, some bacon, a glass of OJ. Then I noticed movement in the corner of my eye. I glanced at the swimming pool. Something long and pale was gliding just underneath the surface of the water. I almost dropped my plate. Is that a crocodile? Amos confirmed. For good luck. He's albino, but please don't mention that. He's sensitive. His name is Philip of Macedonia, Sadie informed me. I wasn't sure how Sadie was taking this so calmly, but I figured if she wasn't freaking out, that I shouldn't either. That's a long name, I said. He's a long crocodile, Sadie said. Oh, and he likes bacon. To prove her point, she tossed a piece of bacon over her shoulder. Philip lunged out of the water, snapped it up, and went back down. His hide was pure white. His eyes were pink. His mouth was so big he could have snapped up an entire pig. He's quite harmless to my friends, Amos assured me. In the old days, no temple would be complete without a lake full of crocodiles. They are powerful magic creatures. Right, I said. So the baboon, the crocodile, any other pets I should know about? Amos thought for a moment. Visible ones? No, I think that's it. I took a seat as far from the pool as possible. Muffin circled my legs and purred. I hoped she had enough sense to stay away from magic crocodiles named Philip. So, Amos, I said between bites of pancakes. Explanations? Yes, he agreed. Where to start? Our dad? She suggested. What happened to him? Amos took a deep breath. Well, Julius was attempting to summon a god, and unfortunately, it worked. It was kind of hard to take Amos seriously, talking about summoning gods while he spread butter on a bagel. Uh-huh. Any god in particular? I asked casually. Or did he just, order a generic god? Sadie kicked me under the table. She was scowling, as if she actually believed what Amos was saying. Amos took a bite of the bagel. There are many Egyptian gods, Carter, but your dad was after one in particular. He looked at me meaningfully. Osiris, I remembered. When Dad was standing in front of the Rosetta Stone, he said, Osiris, come. But Osiris is a legend. He's make-believe. I wish that were true. Amos stared across the East River at the Manhattan skyline, gleaming in the morning sun. The ancient Egyptians were not fools, Carter. They built the pyramids. They created the first great nation-state. Their civilization lasted 1,000 years. Yeah, I said, and now they're gone. Amos shook his head. A legacy that powerful does not disappear. Next to the Egyptians, the Greeks and Romans were babies. Our modern nations, like Great Britain's and America, blinks of an eye. The very oldest roots of civilization, at least Western civilization, is Egypt. Look at the pyramid on the dollar bill. Look at the Washington Monument, the world's largest Egyptian obelisk. Egypt is still very much alive. And so, unfortunately, are her gods. Come on, I argued. I mean, Even if I believe there's a real thing called magic, believing ancient gods is kind of different than that. You're joking, right? But as I said it, I thought about the fiery guy in the museum, the way his face had shifted between human and animal, and the statue of Thoth, how its eyes had followed me. Carter, Amos said, the Egyptians would not have been stupid enough to believe in imaginary gods. The beings they described in their myths are very, very real. In the old days, the priests of Egypt would call upon their gods to channel their power and perform great feats. That is the origin of what we now call magic. Like many things, magic was first invented by the Egyptians. Each temple had a branch of magicians called the House of Life. Their magicians were famed throughout the ancient world. And you're an Egyptian magician? Amos nodded. So was your father. You saw it for yourself last night. I hesitated. It was hard to deny my dad had done some weird stuff at the museum. Some stuff that looked like magic. But he's an archaeologist, I said stubbornly. It was just a cover story. You'll remember that he specialized in translating ancient spells, which are very difficult to understand unless you work in magic yourself. Our family, the Kane family, has been a part of the House of Life since almost the beginning, and your mother's family is almost as ancient. The Fausts? I tried to imagine Grandpa and Grandma Faust doing magic, but unless watching rugby on TV and burning cookies was magical, I just couldn't see it. They had not practiced magic for many generations, Amos admitted. Not until your mother came along, but yes, it's a very ancient bloodline. Sadie shook her head in disbelief. So now, Mum was magic too. Are you joking? No jokes, Amos promised. The two of you combine the blood of two ancient families, both of which have a long, complicated history with the gods. You were the most powerful Kane children to be born in many centuries. I tried to let that sink in. At the moment, I didn't feel powerful. I felt queasy. You're telling me our parents secretly worshipped animal-headed gods? I asked. Not worshipped, Amos corrected. By the end of the ancient times, Egyptians had learned that their gods were not to be worshipped. They were powerful beings, primeval forces, but they are not divine in the sense one might think of God. They are created entities, like mortals, only much more powerful. We can respect them, fear them, use their power, or even fight them to keep them under control. Fight the gods? Sadie interrupted. Constantly, Amos assured her, but we don't worship them. Thoth taught us that. I looked at Sadie for help. The old guy had to be crazy, but Sadie was looking like she believed every word. So, I said, why did Dad break the Rosetta Stone? Oh, I'm sure he didn't mean to break it, Amos said. That would have horrified him. In fact, I imagine my brethren in London have repaired the damage by now. The curators will soon check their vaults and discover that the Rosetta Stone miraculously survived the explosion. Blah, 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 miraculously. But it was blown into 1,000,000 pieces, I said. How could they repair it? Amos picked up a saucer and threw it onto the stone floor. The saucer shattered instantly. That was to destroy, Amos said. I could have done it by magic. Hadi! But it's simpler to smash it. And now, Amos held out his hand. Join Hainem. A blue hieroglyph appeared. Symbol burned in the air. A blue hieroglyph symbol burned in the air above his palm. The pieces of the saucer flew into his hand and reassembled like a puzzle. Even the smaller bits of dust gluing themselves back into place. Amos put the perfect saucer back on the table. Some trick I managed. I tried to sound calm about it, but I was thinking of all the odd things that had happened to my dad over the years. Like those gunmen in Cairo Hotel who'd ended up hanging by their feet from the chandelier. Was it possible my dad had made that happen with some kind of spell? Whew. Amos poured milk in the saucer and put it on the floor. Muffin came padding over. At any rate, your father would never intentionally damage a relic. He simply didn't realize how much power the Rosetta Stone contained. You see, as Egypt faded, the magic collected concentrated into its remaining relics. Most of these, of course, are still in Egypt, but you can find some in almost every major museum. A magician can use these artifacts as a focal point to work more powerful spells. I don't get it, I said. Amos spread his hands. Well, I'm sorry, Carter. It takes years of study to really understand magic, and I'm trying to explain to you all of it in just a single morning. The most important thing is, for the past 6 years, your father has been looking for a way to summon Osiris. Last night, he thought he had found the right artifact to do it. But wait, why would he want to summon Osiris? Sadie gave me a troubled look. Carter, Osiris was the Lord of the Dead. Dad was talking about making things right. He was talking about Mom. Suddenly the morning seemed colder. The fire pit sputtered in the wind coming off the river. He wanted to bring Mom back from the dead? I said. But that's crazy. Amos hesitated. It would have been dangerous, inadvisable, foolish, but not crazy. Your father is a powerful magician. If, in fact, that is what he was after, he might have accomplished it using the power of Osiris. I stared at Sadie. You're actually buying this. You saw the magic at the museum. The fiery bloke. Dad summoned something from the stone. Yeah, I said, thinking of my dream, but that wasn't Osiris, was it? No, Amos said. Your father got more than he bargained for. He did release the spirit of Osiris. In fact, I think he successfully joined with the god. Joined with? Amos held up his hand. Another long conversation. For now, let's just say he drew the power of Osiris into himself. But he never got the chance to use it because, according to what Sadie has told me, it appears that Julius released 5 gods from the Rosetta Stone. 5 gods who were all trapped together. I glanced at Sadie. You told him everything? He's going to help us, Carter. I wasn't quite ready to trust this guy, even if he was our uncle, but I decided I didn't have much choice. Okay, yeah, I said. The fiery guy said something like, You released all 5. What did he mean? Amos sipped his coffee. The faraway look on his face reminded me of my dad. I don't want to scare you. Too late. The gods of Egypt are very dangerous. For the last 2,000 years or so, we magicians have spent much of our time binding and banishing them whenever they appear. In fact, our most important law, issued by Chief Lector Iskander in Roman times, forbids unleashing gods or using their power. Your father broke this law once before. Sadie's face paled. Does this have something to do with Mum's death, Cleopatra's Needle in London? It has everything to do with that, Sadie. Your parents, well, they thought they were doing something good. They took a terrible risk, and it cost your mother her life. Your father took the blame, and he was exiled. I suppose you would say banished. He was forced to move around constantly because the house monitored his activities. They feared he would continue his research, and, indeed, he did. I thought about the times Dad would look over his shoulder, as if he copied some ancient inscription, or wake me up at 3 or 4 in the morning and insist it was time to change hotels, or warn me not to look in his work bag, or copy certain pictures from the old temple walls, as if our lives had all depended on it. Is that why you never came around? Sadie asked Amos. Because Dad was banished? The house forbade me to see him. I loved Julius. It hurt me to stay away from my brother and from you children, but I could not see you until last night, when I simply had no choice but to try and help. Julius had been obsessed with finding Osiris for years. He was consumed with grief because of what happened to your mother. When I learned Julius was about to break the law again, I tried to set things right. I had to stop him. A second offense would have meant a death sentence. Unfortunately, I failed. I should have known he was too stubborn. I looked down at my plate. My food had gotten cold. Muffin leapt on the table and rubbed against my hand. When I didn't object, she started to eat my bacon. Last night at the museum, I said, "The girl with the knife, the man with the forked beard, they were magicians too, from the House of Life?" "Yes," Amos said, "keeping an eye on your father. You are very fortunate that they just let you go." "The girl wanted to kill us," I remembered, "but the guy with the beard said not yet." "They don't kill unless it's absolutely necessary," Amos said. "They will wait to see if you are a threat." "Why would we be a threat?" Sadie demanded. "We're kids, and the summoning wasn't our idea." Amos pushed away his plate. "There's reason you two were raised separately." Find out what that reason is next week when we continue Chapter 6.